Welcome back to Really Ringwood. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 2 months, you must be aware of the budget crisis that is happening in the Ringwood School District. This is the third episode in a row that we're doing on this topic, and it won't be the last. There's quite a lot to unpack with this whole situation.
There is one question that keeps popping up in every discussion. What do the various parties involved want out of this? What are the intentions of everyone? This is an important question to take a step back and look at because the natural instinct is to turn the situation into an us versus them tribalistic argument. We see this at the borough level, as we highlighted a few weeks ago, but that is inherently political. Boards of education are supposed to be apolitical bodies, so it should, in theory, be easier for an all-for-one attitude to prevail.
But sadly, that isn't what we see in Ringwood. But if we try and take a look at why folks are acting the way they are and attempt to see things from their perspective, then perhaps we can find ways to work together. If you listen to the extremists on one side, this entire conflict falls at the feet of Dr. Bernice, the superintendent of the year, who has reportedly been fired from his position. Why are people blaming Dr. Bernice for all of this? Well, the superintendent is where the buck stops in the school district, and ultimately they are responsible for things like the budget and policies that are set because they are at the top of the food chain.
But in this instance, Bernice is an especially easy target for a few reasons. He has been a target for folks who are upset at his conservative handling of the COVID-19 pandemic in regards to our schools requiring masks and not fully opening up as quickly as some would like. He has not been a reactionary when discussing things like sex education or bullying in schools, and these, along with COVID, are the issues that seem to be dog whistles for a loud subset of parents in town.
He's also a lame duck at this point. Why not kick the guy who's on the way out if it will allow others to get away without having any of the stain of failure on them? On the other side of this debate are it's the Board of Education's fault crew. These people don't think Dr. Bernice should be responsible because the board, who we, the citizens of the town, vote in, should have been on top of the budget situation, asking more questions and generally being better communicators, both within their ranks and interfacing with the public.
There's an important point we want to make here about the board. It's foolish to think that once someone gets on the Board of Education, they instantly know how the entire process works and have instant influence on how the board acts. When you hear us refer to the board, we do not mean the 9 people on the board as of April 2024. We're talking about a group of people who have been on the board over the past number of years and, in this specific instance, the folks who were on the budget committee over that time. We cannot expect the 5 board members elected for the first time in 2022 or 2023 to have as nuanced an understanding of the budget as those who were on the board for longer.
So what was Dr. Bernice's intention for how to handle this budget crisis? We will probably never get a satisfactory answer to this question, but we have a hint at part of it. At the special meeting to discuss the reorganization of schools, Dr. Bernice talked about the cost of outsourcing our special education students out of district. By reorganizing the schools, the district would both save money by creating more space for special education in our district, but also gain income from other towns sending their special needs children to our schools.
Would this have totally solved the issue? Most likely not, but Bernice seemed to have a plan to mitigate it at least slightly. What was the board's intention? Well, that's even harder to ascertain. In 2021, there was an auditor brought in to look at the district's finances, but if you listen to former board member and current borough councilman Paul Rebacki, that's irrelevant to the situation for some reason.
Number of people have referenced 2021, the auditor, about that things are going to get bad. That's really not relevant today.
Some board members have claimed that they knew nothing of this budget shortfall, which again, may be true for some of the newer members, but for folks who have been on the budget committee over years, it seems only logical there had to be some clues.
Both the board and the superintendent's intentions are somewhat muddied by the lack of a steady business administrator. There is a shortage of business administrators in the state, and many districts, like Ringwood, have been hiring retired business administrators as temporary solutions, but those folks only want the job temporarily so they can continue to collect their pensions.
If there was a steady hand at the financial till, it's very possible that both sides would have been more informed about the situation. Now, the only intentions that seem crystal clear here are the topics of our last episode, former Board of Education members Ebersbach and Rebacki. In their public statements at the last meeting, both men have attempted to obfuscate the facts in ways that totally remove the blame from themselves and the board. Rebacki spent most of his comment at the March 27th board meeting blaming the state of New Jersey for the shortfall.
The thing is, last year, there's a lot of state aid issues that factor into this. One, state aid, we had a state aid bump last year. I think we went from $300,000 to $500,000, and it rolled back this year. That certainly hurt, okay? The other thing is, we get special education aid. Now, the special education budget went up about $600,000 year over year. It stands at about $8 million. According to the state aid formulas, we are supposed to be reimbursed for special education costs that are above standard costs. It's not supposed to be a burden the district is supposed to handle. It's something the state is supposed to help in. We receive a total of about $2 million of the $8 million, okay? So that's a big gap coming from the state. Health benefits. The state-run health plan, which we're in, is one of the most expensive in the nation. Now, you would think the state, which runs the plan, would take responsibility for their decisions. Everybody's talking about people taking responsibility for their decisions tonight. You would think the state would be coming back and saying, okay, schools are all getting hurt. Education is getting hurt. We need to give you health care aid.
What Mr. Rabacki does not factor in is that Ringwood is not the only town in the state to need aid when it comes to special education or when it comes to healthcare. Yet, there are plenty of other schools that don't get the aid they should and still manage to be okay. So how is Ringwood's need for state aid different than other towns' need for state aid? Well, Ebersbach tried to throw blame on the teachers and the union in town for the budget.
Go ahead.
Please address the board.
I'm going to say this. I think the REA has been very negligent in their observations to blame the board while themselves didn't see this coming. And I think that Eileen Campriella and Schouten should resign because they were not paying attention to what was happening for their constituents.
This episode is not trying to simplify the issue down to it's no one's fault or it's everyone's fault. Instead, it's a call for everyone to take a deep breath and try to see things a little more from the other side. It is most likely that the board and the superintendent both deserve some criticism for their roles in this, and we will be digging deeper into both sides in future episodes.
But there's nothing to be gained from taking an all-or-nothing attitude or from refusing to consider why the other side might have acted the way they did. If your intent is for the schools in town to operate as best they can, you need an effective board and an effective superintendent.
And so, let's not fall into this us versus them mentality that some in town want us to succumb to. The issues aren't black and white, and there is room for understanding, grace, and even compromise on both sides. Remember, this is about the schools and the children. The children don't care who's right or wrong. They're not picking a side, and neither should we.